I wanted to provide a brief overview to Isbin's Enemy of the People. Isbin wrote this play in 1883, and then in 1950, Arthur Miller translated it from Norwegian to English. And so both of them are kind of involved within this kind of hitting the mainstream American kind of mindset. And I want you to think about how this play might connect to some of the ideas that we've been talking about in terms of the Cold War and how it might be a somewhat of a manifestation. We talked about last time the McCarthy era and this clamping down of ideas that are deemed to be dangerous and how that form of censorship hits the United States during the 1950s and 60s. A couple questions after you read The Enemy of People that I would like you to think about, or at least if you're watching this before you read it, I would like you to look for in the play as you read it. And the first one is, who do you think the enemy of the people is in the play, right? So that you think about the title, An Enemy of the People. Who's the true enemy, right? Is it Dr. Stockman? Is it Peter Stockman, who's the mayor? Is it the newspaper man who's responsible for publishing ideas? Or is it the townspeople, right? Or is it someone else, right? Who do you think the real enemy of the people is? And first of all, I would like you to make a case for each of them. And it really helps us to think critically if we can see from multiple angles. So make a case for why Dr. Stockman might be the enemy of the people, why Peter Stockman, the mayor, might be the enemy of the people, why the newspaper man might be the enemy of the people, and then why the townspeople might be the true enemy. And then as you kind of compile this evidence, then you have to determine, what I'd like you to determine is who is the main enemy, right? As you take a look at the overall picture, as you see everyone's perspective, then you can start to analyze and think more critically and make your own conclusion about it. And this helps us to avoid knee-jerk reactions and helps us to be able to think more critically from another perspective. And so there probably will be a discussion board topic on that particular question. There might be a future journal assignment, and this is all getting you to do some pre-writing, some critical thinking as an exercise to push past our kind of immediate reactions and think more in depth. The second two questions I would like you to think about as you read this particular play is neither Isbin, who wrote the original play, or Miller, who translated it, intended to paint a simple picture of right and wrong in the portrayal of the doctor and the mayor. Both Dr. Stockman and Peter Stockman declare their love of the town. I think that's true that both of them love the town. Explain how their love for the community simultaneously is both helpful and detrimental to the town. And again, what this question is designed to do is to get you to think more than just, well, Dr. Stockman loves the town or Dr. Stockman hates the town, right? He's detrimental. It's getting you to see from multiple perspectives. And same with, Peter Stockman, as you take a look at both sides of the story, then we can kind of take a look kind of back, kind of pan out, and then see a little bit more critically, to see a little more accurately about which one do you think is more helpful or more detrimental. And then the third one kind of corresponds to this type of question, goes along the same lines. The play questions the importance and dangers of truth. Consider whether it's better for truth to come to light, even if it can potentially harm a community, or whether dangerous ideas should be suppressed. What does the play conclude, and what are your thoughts on the topic? And just to give you some context to this, I want you to imagine for these two types of questions that you are the mayor of Rexburg, right? Some of you have been to Rexburg. Some of you may not have been to Rexburg. For those of you that have not been to Rexburg, it's a town of about 25,000 people. It's pretty small, pretty kind of, we're all kind of in kind of a close quarters. It's kind of a, walking distance kind of a town, similar to the one that's represented within the Enemy of the People, right? And as the mayor, I want you to think about you're now receiving information that some outbreak has happened, and now you have to decide whether you're going to broadcast that information and tell everybody in town as the mayor, or whether you're going to suppress that information and not allow it to not allow people to know about it, right? So let's examine both of those options. Let's say that you tell people that some dangerous thing, right? So let's just say, for instance, that there's some type of dangerous element that's in the water, right? That's what we see with an enemy of the people. There's something dangerous in the water, right? So let's say that you tell everybody in town, you broadcast that, hey, everybody, there's something dangerous in the water. What's going to happen, right? Then we have to think about what are going to be the effects of that, right? Probably what might happen, depending on how severe it is, right? Let's say it's pretty severe, that people are probably going to leave town, right? You're going to have a mass exodus, right? Now, as the mayor of the town, right? Now, as people are leaving, what's going to happen to businesses, right? If people aren't in Rexburg, what's going to happen to people, the business in the town? How are they going to be affected by that, right? So if there's nobody in town, there's nobody going to frequent the businesses, right? So what's going to happen to businesses? The businesses are going to close down, right? So then, as the mayor, now you're losing people and now you're losing businesses, you're losing tax revenue, and the town is slowly starting to die, right? And then, you have to think about, well, is that the best approach for your town? The other side of this is you repress the information. You don't tell people, you try to keep it on the down low. And what that will do is that people will be able to, for a short amount of time, be able to return, kind of resume normal life, not really think about, what's the problem, the underlying issue, whatever it is. I mean, for instance, it might be something within the water, it could be something within the air, whatever the case may be, but it's something detrimental to the health of the and safety of the community. Well, let's just say you try to repress it, right? So what's going to happen as a result, right? The short-term effect of this is that, everything's going to resume as normal. The long-term effect is that people are going to start to die. So then, in effect, you're going to start, losing, some of the town as well, right? And so the end results in both scenarios are essentially going to be very similar, right? That the town is going to start to fall apart one way or another. The question is, what do you want your outcome to be, right? Do you want it to happen sooner, or do you want it to happen later? If you take a look at repressing the town, what also is going to happen is eventually it's going to come out that you knew about that information and you did nothing about it, right? As the mayor, that you try to repress it. So now there's going to be that backlash against you. And we've seen similar ideas to this. We talked a little bit about this with Wiesels and the perils of indifference, where it comes out later that the United States knew about the Holocaust and did nothing, right? Then we have to think about what's going to happen as a result of that as you're the mayor. And so what we see within the play, that when there's something potentially deadly within the water that's at this, resort that the town has spent a lot of money building. And the question is, should we tell people or should we not tell people, right? And that's kind of the crux between Dr. Stockman and Peter Stockman. Dr. Stockman wants, as the doctor, the scientist of the town, he wants to let people know what's happening. Peter Stockman, the mayor, is afraid of what will happen if people know the truth, right? And so as we think about this, we kind of pull back from this. That's really what, I mean, there's kind of a metaphor, right? As we think about how should politics run? What should we expect from our leaders? Should we expect them to tell us the truth as people? Or should we expect them to keep truth from us, right? And I think the knee-jerk reaction obviously is no, we want them to know the truth. But I think the play is questioning sometimes the truth might not always be the best for people, right? People might not respond to truth in the way that in a responsible sort of way. Sometimes that's going to create mass hysteria, mass panic, right? We're going to, see people reacting emotionally, right? As we think about this, I want you to think about how it fits into the ideas of the Cold War and McCarthyism, right? So that's why I'm having you read it this week, is thematically it ties together, and I want you to be able to, connect the trees, right? I'm kind of, giving you a lot of different ideas, right? This kind of metaphoric forest, these ideas. Now I want you to kind of pull back and to see how, see the actual forest, see how they relate to one another, right? This adaptation was written during the Red Scare and McCarthyism. Why might Miller have chosen to adapt this play during this time? How might this reflect the concerns during the Red Scare? with this in mind, what do you think the argument of the play is? And as we think about McCarthyism and this, are you now or have you ever been a communist? And this idea of, you have to prove your Americanism, you have to prove your allegiance, you have to prove your nationality to people, and any other idea that is not in line with the mainstream thought process is considered to be dangerous, right? So we see a lot of repression. We see a lot of ideas that are being kind of squelched or people put on blacklists because they're not deemed to be American enough. And so we see a lot of censorship happening in the United States in one form or another. And so then the question is during this time is, what do we do with truth, right? What if things run contrary to what the mainstream government wants us to know about? Should we repress them or should we bring them to light? An example of this would be kind of a real world example of this would be the Pentagon Papers. So those of you that have taken modern U.S. history courses are probably somewhat familiar with the Pentagon Papers, but essentially what the Pentagon Papers argued is that the United States was involved in Vietnam way back in the 50s when the US government was telling the people that we really weren't involved with it until the mid 60s, right? So there was this idea of repressing ideas that the government said, well, we don't want people to know that we've been lying to them because that would make us not look very good, right? And so I think it was the Washington Post, some of you will probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the Washington Post got a hold of the Pentagon Papers, found out, all of this information and this evidence that the US government knew about our involvement with Vietnam way before the government allowed it to be known to the American people, and they wanted to publish it. And the US government put a lockdown on it. They said, nope, this violates national security. And it went to the Supreme Court. And it was like the Washington Post versus the United States government, something like that. And essentially, what the Supreme Court ruled is the US government saving face doesn't equate a national security issue, right? So their idea of trying to protect you know, their credibility isn't necessarily a national security issue, which that's what the United States government was suggesting. They were suggesting that people knew about this, and they're not going to trust the U.S. government. That's going to cause people to have, this lack of trust in the government. But that's just one example of the government trying to repress ideas, trying to squelch thoughts during this time of extreme kind of us versus them. We're either going to win or they are going to win kind of mindset. And Arthur Miller takes a look at that within this and questions what should we do with truth? What should the role of the media be, right? As we take a look at question 5, that it kind of picks up on that point. The play questions the role of the media. What do you think the role of the media should be, right? And we hear this a lot. This term, enemy of the people, is broadcast in the news a lot. It's generally used within the political sphere today. It's been used the last couple years pretty regularly that the media is the enemy of the people. And I want us to think about what that means and whether it's accurate. What should the role of the media be, right? Should the media speak truth to power, even if it causes people to question authority figures and or potentially jeopardize stability? Or should it conform to the interests of those in power and or seek to maintain stability, right? So should the press, right, only kind of go along with the government to say, everything's great, even though it might not be? Or should the media really reflect truth and what that truth really is? And I know that there's a lot of biases within the media. I know that there's a lot of, strong feelings and opinions about this. But we really need to have an open question about what the role of the media should be as we move forward, as we look to the future. We need to think about who's going to speak truth to us. Where can we turn for truth? How can we really know how to understand and sift through biasness, sift through political spin, sift through the propaganda that surrounds us so that we can make accurate decisions? And I think that's really what we see at the heart of Arthur Miller's play, and that's what I want you to think about as you go through it is what should the role of the media be? How should we, what should we do with truth? Even if it might be immediately, right, detrimental to us, should we repress it or should we, broadcast it, right? And it's not necessarily, I mean, I know that there's going to be some, immediate reactions to that, but I like the way that has been presents this, that this is this is quite complicated, and it's not going to be an easy answer for us to as we move forward. It's going to be a difficult solution that we're going to have to find. But again, remember that easy ideas only apply to simple minds, right? Simple ideas apply to simple minds, and so as we deal with complex issues, they're going to take complex solutions as we move forward.